And we'd like to welcome you to the Early Learning Assessment Monitoring and Completion webinar. This is training for data managers that are working with the ELA. And as you know, we're coming to the end of the spring assessment window. And so we wanted to make sure that we provide you with some information so that you have what's needed in order to successfully complete this assessment window. Just as a reminder, the Ready for Kindergarten online system, also known as KReady System, is dynamic and it's continuously being updated for improvements. Just please note that the information that we provide for this session is current as of today, May 8th, 2024. For the 2023-24 school year, any program using the Early Learning Assessment, ELA, as part of the requirements for Early Childhood Education Grants, ECE, and or the Preschool Special Education, PSE, funded children must enter all student ratings in the Ready for Kindergarten online system. Programs will not report ELA results in EMIS or EAS as they have in previous years. Again, there is an optional ELA pilot for those that communicated that to the folks at DCY, and you would let them know that that was the choice that you were making, and hopefully that was a carryover again from what occurred in the fall, so there's consistency in how you're monitoring your programs. If you have questions about that, we encourage you to reach out to the ELA help, submit your question there, and they can provide you with some assistance. The window will close on May 14th for the spring collection at 11:59 p.m. on May 14th, 2024. You need to be sure that your teachers have all the student ratings entered prior to this day and this time. With regards to supports, the first is the Department of Children and Youth. This is your go-to if you have questions regarding policy and practice. Likewise, the Ohio K-12 Help is the place that you would come if you have technical questions specific to the KReady system. I'd like to show you very quickly, if you do have questions, how you can submit those questions. And so if you're here on the ohio-k12.help website, click on the Ready for Kindergarten Online System Support. Here are the resources specific to data managers, and you'll see a list of links and resources, videos, help guides. We wanted to also let you know that if you do have questions and you need support, if you scroll to the bottom of any page, you'll find this contact support. You can reach out to us via phone, or you can click on this request support and submit a case or a ticket to us, and someone from our team will provide you with a response. My recommendation is to use the support request here, this form, because you can provide a lot of detail and get that information. You may need to submit or provide some screenshots so that there's clarity. We have an understanding of what's going on. You can actually do that here. You can take a picture, take a screenshot and submit that to us. Again, I encourage you to use the form, but you can, by all means, call the help desk, and there's someone there that can answer during those office hours to respond to your question. Items that you want to make sure that you are checking on. That first step is really about taking a look at scores. So we want you to, at this time, be looking at the data to examine where teachers are in submitting scores, student scores and data. We want to make sure that all these are complete. If there are missing scores, that you are reaching out to your teachers, encouraging them to get those scores collected and entered into the system. Likewise, as you're checking the system, we want you to make sure you're checking the teacher status, looking for those teachers that are active, making sure if there are updates that are needed, you're making those updates. And if there are teachers that are no longer with your organization, that you make those teachers inactive. In addition to that, we want you checking on the enrollments to ensure that your students are linked to teachers. Most cases when students are missing, it's because they have not been linked. They need to have the enrollments updated. So it's important that you're checking to make sure that the students and teachers are linked in the system so that they appear, both for the teachers and for you with regards to reporting. We have new data collection tokens for the regular or full ELA. That data collection token is ELA Spring 24. And for those participating in the pilot, it is Pilot 2024 ELA. So please make sure you're using the correct data token. In addition to that, we want to make sure that you are checking the transfers. If there are transfers that need your approval or that need to be initiated, if you've gotten students and you need to initiate a transfer request, please make sure you're taking care of those things this week so that all of that's cleared in the system prior to the end of the window next week. And then lastly, the point of authority. We want to make sure that you are the point of authority. If you are sharing students with other organizations, whether they be an ESC or a DD or some other organization, we want to make sure that the POA is assigned correctly to the organization that it should be assigned to. So this is the time for you to be doing that and making sure that that is up to date and assigned appropriately.
We're going to start first with data accounting. The first one here is review teacher entries and student scores. As a data manager, you are going to want to ensure your teachers have entered all the scores for their students. And you can monitor that by generating an SKB Ratings Report. The SKB Ratings Report, we will be going through that today, but it is going to show you all the students, who they're attached to, and what scores have been entered thus far for the specific SKB items. Second, we have is updating user and students. For a user, this, if you have an update for a student or for a user, this could be such as a name change or an email address. And what we want to just make sure is that you want to do this manually first, because if you do use the bulk loader in a teacher file, before you do it manually, it will create another account for that user. So when you're updating a teacher, a user for a name change, for an email change, you're always going to do it manually first. And then for a student, you're going to update them manually as well. So this could be such as a name change. Maybe there was a name change, or maybe the student, you didn't have an IEP or the disability code entered for that student. So you want to do that manually for them. And then lastly is the confirm enrollments. And you can do this by generating the SKB ratings report to see all of your students. So if there are students that are not populating on that report, you may need to look deeper into that specific student, because it could be that maybe the teacher was not attached, or the data collection was not attached, or it could be it was a transfer student, and you may need to check on your transfers to see if that transfer for that student, when you added them, was accepted by the previous organization. In a little deeper, and this is where I encourage you to follow me. We're going to go through these steps on updating a user. But again, I want you to remember that, be sure to do this all manually before you do any bulk loading. This avoids duplicating a user account. Now you do see there is a video listed here as well. We also have that, and there's a link to that as well. I want to go live and show you how to update a user. So when you're in your KReady system, select users on that left-hand side, and you're going to search for the user that you are looking for that maybe had a name change. So I am going to look for my specific teacher, and I'm going to select open next to their name. And I know their last name has changed. So I'm going to adjust that, change that, and then change if the email address changed. You're just typing that in manually and hitting save. And you're going to see that this user is now successfully updated. And I encourage you kind of look through these. We're going to go through exactly these steps. And I want you to note that if there are no teachers attached, the student will be marked as inactive. And that student's not going to show on the teacher's roster, nor on any reports for your organization. We do have a video listed here as well that also shows you the step-by-step. But again, I want you to kind of follow me through this, and we'll go back to the KReady system. right underneath your users, you have your students listed. So I'm going to find my student I am looking for in my search box, pull them up, and I'm going to select open next to their name. Now we do see, as I said, the status is active. That means a teacher is attached. If you see that as inactive, and maybe they should be on the roster for that teacher, you're going to make sure you add that teacher. So we'll go through that. We're going to select open. Now, once the student shows up, the first thing you see is that details page. Now, for this student, I know I did not select a disability code for them. So I'm going to want to do that. Select the code. And when you have a disability code, the special ed IEP, IFSP needs to be marked as yes. Then hit save. And you can see the student is now successfully updated. To check to see if the teacher, or to add a teacher or remove a teacher manually for a student, select the Enrollments tab. And here you will see the teachers listed for that student. You can remove anything, any teachers over here on that right-hand side, or if you need to assign a teacher, and let's say there's none there. And then I just want to show you, lastly, you can also check your point of authority for your student. So we do see that that student does have our point of authority. So I know that this student's going to show on my specific report when I generate that. Data accuracy. You're going to want to make sure everything for your students, for your transfers, for your point of authority, everything is correct. So you do see there is a hyperlink next to the transfers and point of authority there, and that will take you right to our hyperlink for our page that has more information. But for transfers, you're going to want to keep an eye on them and make sure that by the end of the window that you approve or decline any incoming transfers, and that your transfers are accepted or by that previous organization. It is up to the organization if they accept or decline a transfer. You can always reach out to them, let them know, hey, I triggered a transfer request. I just want to maybe they didn't see it. And maybe you want to just make sure that they go ahead and approve that. But I also want to remind you too, when it comes to internal transfers, for instance, if you're moving a student from one building to another, that is not going to show in your transfer history or your transfers, your request. So I just want you to keep that in mind. You're not going to see that. We will go through the transfer. I'll show you more detail here shortly. But I do want to make sure that you know that internals transfers will not show. Now, check point of authority status. If you don't have the point of authority for a student and you feel you should, you want to reach out to that previous organization and contact that data manager. So to check, you can manually do that, like I showed you when we were looking at the student, or you can run an SKB Ratings Report. And there is a filter by POA, which is point of authority. And we're going to go over this in a bit, but the filter by point of authority will help you see your students that you have the POA for, or you can check the box and you can see all students that you have uploaded, regardless of the point of authority. So when it comes to a student that, let's say, is being shared by two organizations, for instance, maybe a district and an ESC, they're going to need to work locally to see who is going to actually have that point of authority. But as long as someone is entering the data for the students, I will say the Department of Children and Youth will make sure all parties that are responsible for that student will get credit for those scores. And the reason I say that is if a teacher at an ESC is entering scores for a student and it's shared by another district, both teachers are not going to need to enter scores. I want you to know that the last score entered is what is going to be the score for that student. So I just want you to keep that in mind when it comes to point of authority. Now, lastly is review reports. Now, you want to make sure your students are properly attached to their teacher and scores are entered for the required items, or all items, depending on what your organization is doing. The report that was going to show and help you the most is going to be that ELA SKB Ratings Report. So right underneath your students, you see transfers. Now, the first one is your request from others. This is if you have a transfer that has come in that you may not have approved or declined at that point. I mean, you just haven't seen it. It's going to be listed here. Your requests. Now, this is going to show any requests that you have asked for. So when you enter a student into the KReady system, if that SSID has already been entered into the system this year, it will trigger a transfer request, either manually or if you're doing a bulk load. So maybe the student has came to you halfway and they've already gone to another organization. So again, you're going to want to check your request to make sure all of those that you had have been approved by the previous organization. Now, lastly is the transfer history. Now, this is going to show all of your requests or requests from others. Now, I do, again, want to kind of stress that the internal transfers from building to building are not going to show in your request or your transfer request. So I just want to make sure you note that. External transfers. Like I said, when a student is uploaded into the KReady system, and that SSID has already been entered this year, it's going to trigger that transfer request, whether you do that manually or through the bulk loader. So student data can be collected while a transfer is pending, but the point of authority is going to remain with the original district until the transfer is approved. So this is why you want to make sure in all of your students that you have that information for them. Data analysis, you're really working with the data that you've gathered and kind of making any useful decisions regarding your students. So the first one here is your data displays. The data displays are a collection of interactive charts that help to show your students in your district and how they're performing. These reports allow you to filter, view ELA data in a more visual manner, and you can view these data displays anytime as long as the teacher has entered scores for the student for the item. Now you can find your data displays under the bulk loader, and I'll show you where that's at in a moment. And then review archives. There is more information there that takes you right to our archive page so you can see. But I want to remind you, if reports are not generated basically, during the current assessment window, so assessment year, they're not going to be listed in your archives. Only reports that are generated during the active assessment window year will be archived. And I'm going to show you exactly how you want to see those archives, and we'll go back to see where those data displays are. So the data displays is located right underneath your bulk loader. So if you select data displays, depending on which assessment you did, the standard version or the pilot version, you would click that. Takes a moment, but when it does generate, you have different reports, different filters, different things you can do. So this just gives you a different look, different visual for your students. Now your archive. Now these are listed by year. So you can kind of see each bullet's a hyperlink. So it takes you to that specific year, and you'll be able to see which reports you generated during that school year, if you generated any. So you can see my last one I did last year was in May 16th. And you can see through all your reports that you generated during that school year. So if you ever wanted to go back and kind of take a look at what happened previously to this year, and you can see more information there. I want to look a little more deeper, and this is kind of what I've been touching base on is how the reports, the things that you can generate. There are the three different reports here or two different reports in the data archive. So the first one is the data downloads report. And this is more of a managerial report for data managers. It kind of shows, it will show what teachers, what students, what enrollments have been added to the KReady system. And this is another way of you checking to see what has been uploaded and what hasn't. This is available both during and after the window. The main one that you find so much more information on for everything is the SKB Ratings Report. And this is used to assist in monitoring those items. What scores have been entered? What teachers are attached to which students? And this is available both during and after. And then lastly is the data archives. And this is what I showed earlier. This is the different reports that you generated during that specific school year. We're going to go through accessing this SKB ratings report. I encourage you to follow me through. The note I wanted to kind of highlight here as well, keep this in mind. By default, the filter by point of authority is automatically checked. And when it is checked, it's going to show only students whose point of authority is with your organization. When it is unchecked, it's going to show students, all of the students that you have uploaded for your district, for your organization, regardless of the point of authority. So this is that option that I find is best for organizations that are sharing those students, such as an ESC, a district, any of those schools that they're both reporting that student. This allows you to see those students regardless of that point of authority. Now you do see we have the link down here that takes you directly to the video and to the page of the screenshots you can also see. I want to kind of go back and generate this together. So go to your reports in your left-hand navigation. We're going to select the drop down next to create a report. Select ELA SKB Ratings Report. Now, depending on your data collection that your organization has used, you'll either be the spring 2024 or the pilot version. So for this example, we use the spring 2024. Now, like I said, the filter by point of authority by default is going to be checked. When it is checked, you're only going to see students that you have the point of authority for. When you uncheck it, you will see all students that have been loaded to the district, to the organization, regardless of the student's point of authority. And again, this is a great option for when students are shared by two organizations. Now, all the other items here are unchecked by default. So you can check them if you want. If you show observation dates, this would be if the teacher was entering scores via the ELA web app and they changed the observation date to a different date than when they actually entered the score. You can see that if you'd like. You can have this report include inactive students. You can have it include show comments. So if a teacher entered a comment for an item for a student for a specific SKB, or show artifacts. Now I'm going to leave all those blank. I'm just looking at my students. I want to check the data. So I'm going to check my start date is always the very beginning of the window. So for the spring ELA, that started on February 15th. Select OK. Now your end date, you can do it as of today because the window actually hasn't closed yet. However, if you want to just do the actual end date as just a habit, the end date for the spring window ends May 14th. Now, location, you can choose if you have multiple locations under your organization and you want to see multiple or a specific building, not all of them, you would select that and then generate the report. If you want to look as your district, your organization as a whole, you're going to select that and then select generate report. Now you're going to see your report has been successfully requested, so you can close out of that. And it is in processing status. So reports can take a minute or so to process and generate the downloaded link. Give it a little bit of time. Reports can also take up to 4 hours to generate. If it's over 4 hours, we do encourage you to contact the help desk. so we can look into that further. So for time purposes, I went ahead and generated this just before, and this is the report that generates. So these are all of my students. So all of my student information. So each of their information, their date of birth, all of that. Then you have the school information, what school, and then the teacher information. So I can see which teachers they're attached to. Now looking at this, now, like I said, this is the ELA standard version. So this is going to show all 72. But if you are not doing all 72, you're just doing the 24 required, you're just going to be looking for specific scores for those specific items. Now, I'm going to look here and just, since I'm generating this today, I'm going to say, all right, we have some scores that are empty. So I have, I know these scores there should be scores entered for these students by these teachers. So as the data manager, I'm going to want to reach out to each one of my teachers listed here that have empty scores and make sure they're on top of that if they just haven't maybe had the time to enter them, or if they were still assessing the items. You just want to check. This is where you're going to monitor this data that's getting entered to make sure, because the data scores have got to be entered by May 14th at 11:59 p.m., no later. So all preschool special education, PSE, and early childhood education, ECE grant funded programs, like I say, need to have scores entered into the KReady system, okay? These all need to be entered by May 14th at 11:59 p.m., no later. And using that SKB ratings report, that's where you're going to verify those scores. And if you're participating in the standard version, that's going to show all 72. But you may be looking just for the priority items. If you are participating in the pilot, it's going to show all of those SKBs, but you may be only looking for the priority items. No manual submission for reporting is to be done through EMIS or EAS for this school year, 2023-2024 Early Learning Assessment. A couple repeating questions regarding the data displays and what the X means. The X actually is meaning that there is no scores entered for that specific item. Those data displays that has more information, and it does have the listed of what the actual number, who, for instance, how many students have scored a specific item, and has that percentage down.
I see another question here asking, is there training to learn how to use the KReady system for new teachers? So the short answer to that is yes. The longer answer is that training has already occurred. And if you do have teachers that need information on how to use the system, we're going to encourage you to reach out to that ELA help email address so that we can try and get that addressed.
Your SKB ratings report are showing up blank. So when you're generating this report, make sure you're adding the correct spring date. So the start date of the very beginning of the window, which was February 15th, and the end date of either today or May 14th. Now, if it's coming up blank, this is where you're going to look at all of your teachers and your students. Maybe you haven't added those students and connected them to the correct data collection token for the spring, because every window you do need to add the students again to the correct data collection. So it's not an automatic. So you'll want to look at those students, ask your teachers if they can see what are they seeing in their rosters when they log in. If it's coming up blank and you know there should be, make sure that you're looking at each. You may need to do a bulk load and do a enrollment file and add them to the data collection, or you might want to do that manually. Looking at your students, and if you want to see if they're attached, on that left-hand side, go to your organizations, select View Districts. And then View Locations and View Students. So this will then populate a list of all of your students that are attached to that specific location. And I want to look and see if my student is attached to the spring data collection. Select data collection assignments, and you're going to see all the different data collections that the student was attached to. So they were attached to the fall, the winter, and they are attached to the spring. So next check, you can check your enrollments. Make sure they're attached to your teachers. Okay, and then you can also check your point of authority and just see if this does not say you have, it's not green and is not showing that you have that point of authority. That's where you're going to want to look in your transfers and double check. You may need to reach out to your previous district. To go back to your list of students in this light gray bar, select students. This goes back to your list. And I can see, for instance, I already see one student here that is listed in inactive. And I know they should be attached to a teacher for the spring. So I want to select open. And remember what I said earlier, inactive students means that no teacher is assigned to that student. So here I want to go ahead and assign that teacher and hit finished. Now we're going to see the teacher attached, and then check your data collection token. Make sure that they're attached to that spring window. If you run your SKB ratings report by location instead of by district, it's however you want to, it's whichever way you want to take a look at. Like I say, if you have the students attached to the correct data collection, to the correct teacher, those students will then populate on those reports for you. Adding a student to the data collection manually. Like I say, you're just going to go into that organization and kind of drill down until you see your students and can kind of from there open that student up and assign that data collection manually and make sure that they're attached to their teacher. If a student has left your organization, we do encourage you to hold off. If there's scores entered for the student, hold off on removing the teacher from them and making them inactive. You want to see if the transfer comes through from the new organization. It is up to the new organization to accept a transfer or to trigger the transfer request by adding the student to the KReady system. I would encourage hold off on that. Nothing's gonna happen to it. But just in case so those scores don't end up in limbo, we do encourage you just to kind of wait until you get that transfer request.
Is there a data cleanup period this time? Yes, we apologize that date was not provided. I'm going to provide that date right now. So if you are taking notes, please make sure that you know that May 14th is the last day for teachers to enter ratings for children. So you need to make sure that any required children are enrolled in the spring data collection now so that teachers can enter those ratings for the SKBs by May 14th. Data managers will have a cleanup window, meaning you can clean up, if there's an ethnicity that you wanted to add or race, or if you want to fix an IEP disability code, or if there are transfer requests, the cleanup window for data managers will go through May 21. May 21 for data managers to do any cleanup, but teachers have to have their ratings entered by May 14th. So between May 14th and May 21, data managers can do some cleanup of children.